The necklace was still rusting in its box when I buried my husband. A delicate chain, a deep sapphire pendant, the kind of thing a man gives when he wants to be remembered. He handed it to me the night before he died, said it was just because. I kissed his cheek, told him I loved him. He said, "You're the only one for me." I believed him. God help me, I believed him. 2 days later, I was standing over his casket, surrounded by polite years. No children, just us. A quiet, predictable rhythm of dinners at 7, coffee by 8, and jazz humming softly through our Sunday mornings. I thought I knew every corner of his soul, but I didn't. Because 12 days after the funeral, I used the necklace to open a safe I didn't know existed, hidden behind a painting in an office I'd never been allowed to enter. And what I found inside was a roadmap to a life I was never part of. A second home, a second family, and a set of offshore bank accounts that connected my sweet, soft-spoken husband to people who didn't just want money, they wanted silence. And now, they want me. I used to think betrayal was loud. Screaming matches, slammed doors, whispered phone calls in the dark. But betrayal can be quiet too. It can sit across the dinner table, smiling, with kind eyes. It can hold your hand at night and promise forever, all while building another world behind your back. My name is Emily Green, and if you're hearing this, you need to understand something. I didn't set out to destroy anyone. But when you bury the man you thought you loved and find out he died with more secrets than savings, sometimes you have no choice but to dig them all up.
If any part of this already feels too wild to be real, I understand. But I promise you, it only gets worse from here. So if you're still with me, take a breath and keep watching. Because by the end of this story, you'll know exactly what it means to love someone who lived a lie, and how I turned his secrets into the one thing he never expected: leverage. People always told me Jonathan and I were the perfect couple. At work, I'd catch coworkers smiling when he picked me up after a late meeting. At neighborhood barbecues, folks would nudge each other and say, "Now that's a man who takes care of his wife." And I guess in all the usual ways, they were right. Jonathan Green was the kind of man who made life feel smooth. He had a calming voice, a clean desk, and a calendar that ran like clockwork. He wore pressed shirts even on Saturdays, paid the mortgage on time, booked dinner reservations without being asked. There were no raised voices, no slammed doors, no hidden credit card bills. We had a golden retriever named Marley, a garden full of lavender, and 2 matching recliners by the window facing the Rockies. People envied what we had, and I let them, because I did too. I didn't need grand gestures. I didn't crave fireworks or whirlwind getaways. I just wanted steady. I wanted to come home to the smell of garlic in the kitchen, to the sound of Jonathan humming under his breath while he set the table. And for 15 years, that's exactly what I got. Or so I thought. The cracks didn't show up like in the movies. There wasn't lipstick on a collar or suspicious text flashing on his phone. There was just distance. Little things. Subtle shifts. He started working later on Thursdays. Claimed he had to meet a consulting client in Loveland, some retired developer with trust issues and $1 million design project. Every Thursday, like clockwork. I believed him. Then there were the locked drawers in his home office, the password-protected folder on his laptop. He said it was NDA protected. Client stuff, he'd mutter. You wouldn't understand, Em. And I didn't press. That's how our marriage worked. Easy, unspoken boundaries. I told myself it was respect. Now I know it was permission. Permission to keep secrets. The day of the funeral, I remember standing in the living room, hands wrapped around a cup of untouched tea, waiting for someone to explain how a healthy 46-year-old man just drops dead of a heart attack. The doctors called it a massive myocardial infarction. Their tone was rehearsed, professional. I nodded, like it made sense. But it didn't. Not when he'd never mentioned a single heart issue. Not when he jogged 3 times a week and refused anything with processed sugar. Not when he'd smiled at me the night before, handed me that necklace, and kissed me like everything was still okay. But something had shifted in him. Something I only started to see when it was already too late. That shift, it started with my sister, Rachel. Rachel arrived at the funeral wearing black silk and crocodile tears. She hugged me like she meant it, too long, too tight, and whispered in my ear, "I'm so sorry, Em. Jonathan was like a brother to me." Her voice was smooth, but something in the way she said it made my skin crawl. It didn't sound like grief. It sounded rehearsed. I tried to push the feeling down. It was a funeral, not a therapy session. People grieve in strange ways. I told myself that over and over as she floated through the room like she was the one being consoled. Later that evening, I found her in my kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine, already barefoot, already making herself at home. She leaned on the counter like we were back in high school, sharing gossip instead of grief. "Listen," she said, swirling the wine like she was on some reality show. "I know it's not really the time, but Jonathan loaned me some money a while ago. I was hoping we could settle it now that you're, taken care of." I stared at her. "What money?" She blinked, just once, then smiled like I was being dense. "Oh, I guess he never told you." Something inside me twisted. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I just nodded slowly and said I'd look into it. But that night, I didn't sleep. I wandered through the house, touching everything, pillows, drawer handles, the edge of Jonathan's side of the bed, searching for something that felt real, something that felt mine. That's when I saw it. His key ring, still sitting on the hallway table, right where he always left it. I picked it up without thinking, and there it was. The key. The one shaped differently than the others. The one I'd asked about once years ago. "That's just for the workshop," he'd said. "Nothing interesting in there. You wouldn't like it." I never pressed. I should have, because that key didn't just open a door. It opened the truth. I left before sunrise. The key sat heavy in my pocket like it knew something I didn't. I didn't tell Rachel. I didn't call anyone. I just grabbed my coat, took Marley out for a quick walk, and drove straight out of Boulder, heading north. The air was sharp, the kind of cold that keeps you awake even when your mind is fogged with grief. Jonathan's workshop was about 40 minutes away in Loveland, tucked behind a rusting auto body shop and a row of tired-looking warehouses with peeling paint and busted security lights. Not the kind of place you'd expect a man like Jonathan to spend time in. But apparently, he came here every Thursday, like clockwork. I pulled into the gravel lot and parked beside a metal roll-up door. No signage, no windows, just a faded red number stenciled on the side. Unit 14. I held the key in my hand and stared at the lock. It didn't want to turn. Not at first. It groaned like it was resisting me, as if it too had been warned I shouldn't be here. When it finally clicked open, I hesitated. I wasn't sure what I expected. A dusty collection of tools? Maybe some forgotten hobby project? Something boring, something harmless. But the moment the door creaked up and the smell of oil and paper hit my nose, I knew. This wasn't a workshop. It was something else. The lights flickered on overhead, those harsh, humming fluorescents that made everything look sterile and too real. And there, in front of me, was a room straight out of someone else's life. The walls were covered in photos, maps, handwritten notes, printed emails, even newspaper clippings.
At the center stood a steel desk with files stacked in neat columns. Every detail was curated, precise, intentional. And on the far wall, mounted like a shrine, was a grid of photographs. Jonathan was in every single one. But he didn't look like my husband. He looked like someone else entirely. And he wasn't alone.
The man in the photos was still Jonathan, but not the Jonathan I knew. He wasn't wearing his button-down shirts or his pressed slacks. He wasn't standing stiff-backed with that quiet, polished smile. In these photos, he looked different, relaxed. Worn jeans, wrinkled t-shirts, a 3-day beard. His eyes had a softness to them, a kind of ease I hadn't seen in years, maybe ever. And then there was her. In nearly every photo, a woman stood beside him. Dark hair, sharp cheekbones, confident eyes. Younger than me, maybe by 10 years, but not delicate. She looked strong, comfortable beside him, her hand on his chest, his arm around her waist. In one photo, they were at a beach, both barefoot, laughing. In another, they stood on a snowy balcony, holding mugs of something warm. There was one with them and a young man, mid-20s maybe, posing in front of a cabin with a kind of closeness that only comes from blood or something damn near it. I flipped one of the photos over, in Jonathan's handwriting, Isabel and Logan, August 2024. I froze. That same day, I had been at home, making lasagna, waiting for Jonathan to get back from a client meeting. I even set the table with candles. He came home late, kissed me on the cheek, said he was stuck in traffic. Now I was staring at proof that he'd spent that night smiling beside another woman and their son. My knees went weak. I caught myself on the cold edge of the steel desk. Beneath my hand was a folder. I opened it slowly. Bank statements, transfer receipts, international wires under names I didn't recognize, a medical file with his name on it from a heart clinic in Denver. The diagnosis made my breath catch. Stage 3 ischemic heart disease, risk of sudden cardiac arrest. He knew. Jonathan knew he was dying, and instead of telling me, instead of giving me time or comfort or truth, he spent his final days with them, planning for them. Not me. Not the woman who had loved him for 15 years. Not the woman who buried him.
I didn't hear the door open. I only heard the footsteps. Soft, hesitant, like someone unsure they should be there. My breath caught. My heart started pounding in my ears. I turned fast. One hand still braced on the desk, and there he was. The young man from the photograph. He stood in the doorway of the unit, silhouetted against the gray morning light. Same dark hair, same sharp jaw, same quiet intensity in his eyes. He didn't flinch when I looked at him. He just said, calm and steady, "Emily Green?" I couldn't speak. "I thought you might come here," he said, stepping forward slowly. "I'm Logan Myers. Jonathan Green was my father." And just like that, the floor gave out beneath me. I must have stared at him for a full minute before I could form a thought. My mouth moved before the words came out. You're really his son?" Logan nodded. "Yes." There was no hesitation, no apology in his voice, just the calm of someone who's lived with the truth for a long time. I felt the room tilt. My knees buckled, and I dropped into the chair behind the desk without thinking. My hands trembled on my lap. I finally managed, "How long have you known about me?" "My whole life," he said simply. He didn't tell me much, only that he was married, that you didn't know about me. My mom, Isabel, she respected that. She didn't want to interfere. I blinked. "But she's gone now, isn't she?" Logan's face softened. "She passed away last year. It changed things." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "He gave this to me 2 weeks before he died. said the official version of his will would go to you. But this one? This was for backup, just in case. I took it with shaking hands, unfolded it slowly. There it was, Jonathan's handwriting, steady, familiar, looped just like on birthday cards and dinner notes. It wasn't notarized, but it was real. And in it were names I didn't recognize, companies I'd never heard of, and a sentence that made my blood run cold. Access to remaining documents secured in office vault. Code linked to personal item gifted to E. The necklace. It wasn't just a gift, it was a key.
2 days later, I found myself standing in the marble lobby of a downtown high-rise Jonathan had always referred to as just a satellite office. I'd passed it 100 times without noticing, tucked between a private equity firm and a boutique law office, the kind of place where everything looked polished, quiet, and confidential. Logan stood beside me, a worn backpack slung over his shoulder. He handed his ID to the receptionist without flinching. "I'm listed as co-owner," he said. She barely blinked, then waved us through. Just like that. We took the elevator to the 14th floor in silence. I couldn't stop glancing at the necklace around my neck, the one Jonathan had given me the night before he died, the one I thought was a farewell gesture, not a set of instructions. The elevator doors opened to a cold, glass-walled office, sleek furniture, bare surfaces. Not a single photo of us, not even our wedding picture, just gray walls, a scent of expensive cologne, and silence. "This is it," Logan said, walking behind the steel desk. He pointed to a large abstract canvas hanging over the back wall. Without warning, he pressed gently on the lower right corner. The painting tilted forward with a soft click, revealing a metal panel flush with the wall. The vault. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the necklace. My fingers trembled as I twisted the sapphire pendant. There was a soft pop, and out slid a thin metal card, no bigger than a SIM chip. Logan took it carefully and inserted it into a small slot hidden in the panel. A red light blinked, then green. A soft beep. The vault door hissed open. Inside were 4 things: a stack of documents tied with twine, a black flash drive, a small wooden ring box, and a single silver key tagged Bank of the Rockies Federal Deposit Safe. I reached for the box first. It wasn't mine. I knew that the moment I touched it. Inside, a gold ring, simple, elegant, and engraved on the inside with one small letter. N. Always. Not E, not Emily. N for Isabel.
I drove to Rachel's condo that same evening. Not because I wanted closure, because I wanted the truth, or whatever version she was still hiding. She lived in one of those brand new luxury developments on the north end of town. Polished stone entryways, coated gates, underground parking, and an in-unit wine fridge. Odd, considering she'd been complaining about money for years. I took the elevator to the 5th floor. As it climbed, I felt something coiling tighter in my chest with each ding. She opened the door barefoot, wearing silk pajamas and a glass of Pinot Noir already in hand. Her makeup was perfect, her hair freshly styled, like she was expecting someone. "Well, if it isn't my grieving sister," she said with a little smirk, "come to inspect the widow's inheritance." "Cut the crap, Rachel," I snapped. "We need to talk." I pushed past her into the living room. That's when I saw it. A framed photo on the side table. Her and Jonathan. Laughing, clinking glasses, champagne. The date on the corner made my stomach flip. 5 years ago. "What the hell is this?" I asked, holding it up. Rachel glanced over casually. "Oh, that company holiday party. You were too tired to go, remember? Jonathan insisted I join him." She said it like it was nothing, like having drinks with my husband while I stayed home folding laundry was completely normal. "We always got along so well," she added. "So casual, so practiced." I turned and looked her dead in the eye. "How well, exactly?" Her smirk twitched.
She walked over to her liquor cart, refilled her glass, then turned to face me fully. "Fine," she said, setting the glass down and placing a hand gently on her stomach. "I'm pregnant," she said flatly. "And it's Jonathan's." My pulse dropped. My mind couldn't process the words fast enough. 10 weeks, she added. "I found out a week before he died. He knew." I stared at her. "You were still seeing him after Isabel died?" She shrugged. "She was never supposed to be permanent. I was always the one who stayed."
I didn't go home after that. I couldn't. Not to the house with its perfectly arranged dinnerware and empty bed. Not after what Rachel had just said. Instead, I drove straight to Joanne's place, my best friend since college, the one person who knew when to talk and when to just pour tea and listen. She didn't ask where I'd been. She opened the door, looked at my face, and said, "You need sleep." I didn't argue, but sleep never came. The next morning, Logan showed up with the flash drive we'd pulled from Jonathan's vault. We sat in Joanne's living room, laptop open, sunlight spilling across the floor. The drive was small, black, unmarked, like it had nothing to say unless you asked the right way. There was only one folder. For Emily. Inside, a single video file, dated 10 days before Jonathan died. I pressed play. His face appeared on screen, hollowed, pale, shirt wrinkled, eyes tired in a way I'd never seen. He leaned toward the camera and said, "Emily, if you're watching this, it means I didn't make it. Or maybe I ran out of time." He rubbed his face. "There's someone you need to be careful with. Someone you trust more than you should." My breath caught. "It's Rachel." The room went still. "She wasn't just someone I slipped up with," he said. "It wasn't that simple. She planned this. The pregnancy, it wasn't an accident." I felt the blood drain from my face. "She said if I left her, she'd go public, with the money, the shell accounts, everything I've buried to keep you safe." Then he said something that made Joanne gasp. "I think she killed Isabel." My stomach twisted. He couldn't prove it. The crash had been ruled an accident. No witnesses. Brakes failed. But Jonathan insisted. Isabel had just booked a one-way flight. The timing was too perfect. She didn't even know Rachel was pregnant. He stared into the lens and said, "I was weak, but you're not. If you want to walk away, do it. But if you fight back, don't do it alone." The screen went black. I closed the laptop, slowly. Rachel didn't just betray me. She destroyed everyone in her path, and now she was carrying my dead husband's child.
We didn't wait another day. By noon, Logan and I were standing in front of the Federal Trust Building, a discreet gray structure sandwiched between a historic bank and a florist shop in downtown Denver. The kind of place you'd pass 100 times without ever realizing it hid secrets beneath the ground. Clutching the silver key from the vault, I stepped through the glass doors. The receptionist looked up, barely interested, until she saw the tag, Bank of the Rockies, Deposit Safe. Her posture changed. She made a quick call. Within minutes, a vault manager escorted us downstairs. The air grew cooler with each step. Layers of reinforced doors swallowed sound, the kind of quiet that felt strategic. He stopped in front of a long steel wall. "This box hasn't been accessed in years," he noted. "It's registered under a corporate shield, Pine Ridge Holdings. Jonathan's fake company." He handed me gloves. Standard procedure. Then he left us alone. My hand hovered over the lock. "You ready, Logan?" I asked. "No," he whispered, "but I'm doing it anyway." The key turned easily. The box slid forward with a whisper. No stacks of cash,
No passports, no diamonds. Just one manila folder. And a photograph. The photo showed Jonathan, Logan, and two other men I didn't recognize, arms crossed, standing in front of a sleek black SUV. They were smiling, but not for the camera, like they'd just done something they were proud of and terrified to admit. Logan leaned in. "That's Gordon Blake," he said, pointing. "And the other guy, that's Victor Crane. Names from the flash drive, from the shell accounts, from the threats." The folder was thicker than it looked. Inside, signed contracts, offshore transfers, shell company registrations, and one document marked in red, Crane, blackmail insurance. Jonathan had kept records of everything. Proof, dates, transactions, partnerships, the entire web. It wasn't just a mess. It was leverage, a loaded gun in a paper holster. I looked at Logan. He didn't just lie. He planned for this. He nodded. "And now it's ours." We didn't go home. We drove straight to the office of Marcus Doyle, a private estate attorney who had handled my father's affairs years ago. A quiet man with silver-rimmed glasses and an allergy to small talk. That's exactly what I needed. No sympathy, no disbelief, just results. Marcus listened as I laid it all out. Well, most of it. I left out the affair, left out Rachel's pregnancy. That wasn't the part that mattered legally. What mattered were the documents, the flash drive, the offshore accounts, and the two very real threats we'd received. One from Gordon Blake, the other from Victor Crane. Marcus didn't blink. "Do you want to press charges?" "No," I said. "I want insurance." He nodded once. "Then we'll duplicate everything. Digitally, physically, 3 copies. One here, one with you, and one with someone who isn't legally connected to you." "I know just the person," Joanne said from behind me. For the next 6 hours, we scanned, organized, encrypted, and archived every piece of evidence. It was exhausting and empowering. Jonathan had built a criminal network and hidden it in simple sight. His business partners thought the truth had died with him, but they were wrong. By sundown, Marcus had drafted a simple letter with a list of conditions and a warning. At the bottom, in my own handwriting, I added one line. "Try me. E.G." We sent it by courier to Gordon Blake's office. He called within 15 minutes. "You think you're clever," he hissed. "You're in over your head." "No," I said, voice calm. "You are, because the next call I make is to the IRS. After that, Interpol." There was a pause, then laughter. Nervous, controlled. "All right," he said. "What do you want?" "Nothing," I replied. "No calls, no threats, no late-night warnings. You touch me or anyone I care about, and the folder goes public. Every document, every signature. You don't want that kind of trouble. I already have that kind of trouble. The difference is I'm not afraid of it anymore." He hung up, but I didn't. I'd been silent long enough.
That night, I sat on Joanne's porch with Logan beside me. The flash drive rested in his jacket pocket. A second copy was buried in a planter box near the back steps. Paranoid, maybe, but when you've been lied to by the person you trusted most, paranoia stops being fear. It becomes survival. I stared up at the stars, cold and steady in the Colorado sky. For the first time in weeks, my hands were still. "I didn't know he was capable of all this," Logan said quietly. "My mom always said he was complicated. I thought she meant sad, not corrupt." I nodded slowly. He was both, and maybe more. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt tired, but not weak. Because in that moment, I finally understood something. Jonathan didn't just leave behind secrets. He left behind a choice. His mess, his empire, his betrayals. They weren't mine to carry unless I chose to. And I chose to walk away. The next morning, I met Marcus one last time, handed him the original flash drive, a signed affidavit, and one instruction. If anything happens to me, send it to every major news outlet in the country. Then I went home. I walked through each room of the house Jonathan and I had shared. I touched the back of every chair, the cracks in the floorboards we never fixed, the photos that didn't mean anything anymore. I packed a single suitcase, left the rest behind. When I reached the garage, the shrine to his second life, I locked the door. Not to hide anything, but because I wasn't coming back. 1 week later, I boarded a flight to Flagstaff, Arizona. A new town, a small cottage near the edge of the mountains, just me, fresh air, and a name on the lease that was mine alone. Not Jonathan's wife, not Rachel's sister, just Emily Green. Widow. Survivor. And the lesson? Trust isn't something you give freely. It's something people earn. And if they can't, then you don't owe them your silence. You owe yourself the truth, even if you have to dig it out with shaking hands.